I uncovered the dark genetic secret of the Fairmont family, a nightmare buried for generations. I never should have opened that door. It was one of those doors that just felt wrong. The moment my hand rested on the cold brass knob, a chill coursed through me. My gut twisted and turned. Every bone in my body told me to turn back, but curiosity clawed at my mind. It was a normal Tuesday afternoon, the kind where I'd sip coffee while sifting through dusty old family records at the local library. Just me and the faint humming of fluorescent lights. But then I found a scrap of paper, yellowed with age, tucked between brittle pages. The Fairmont lineage. They were a respectable family, or so I thought. There were whispers about them, mysteries that flickered in shadows. Secrets that shouldn't be unearthed. Yet, there it was, a haunting mention of something twisted, a genetic legacy of madness. The more I read, the more the air thickened. A line of fervent scribblings about inheriting nightmares. My heart thudded, pounding in my chest, as if it wanted to escape. The library felt darker, colder, the corners of the room engulfed in creeping shadows. The hum of the lights faded, replaced by a deafening silence. Something was wrong. I glanced around. Eyes. Were those eyes watching me? My mind raced. I could hear the rustle of paper in the stillness. It was as if the very walls were whispering secrets in hushed tones. My neck prickled. Suddenly, the silence shattered. A crash, followed by a low groan. My hands trembled as I dropped the paper. The filigree clock on the wall ticked ominously. I felt a presence move behind me. Heart racing, I spun around, but nothing was there. Just the emptiness and a breeze that smelled like damp earth, like freshly turned graves. I should have left. I should have walked away. Yet, my feet betrayed me and slid toward that door at the far end of the room. I hesitated. My breath caught in my throat. Thunder rumbled outside, a low growl that seemed to echo through the very foundation of the library. Shadows flickered on the walls, mocking me. Was I really about to do this? I grasped the knob, twisting it slowly, as if it were a stubborn child refusing to budge. The hinges squeaked a cry of warning, perhaps. The door creaked open to reveal darkness, a void that stretched into eternity. I stepped inside, me pulse racing, fear blooming like a heavy weight in my chest. The air was thick and stale, alive with secrets that clawed at my sanity. I could almost hear them, the hushed cries of the past, warning me to turn back. And then it happened. A figure flickered at the edge of my vision, just a shadow. My breath hitched. "Hello?" I called, my voice quivering. No response. Just darkness and that insistent pull of fear swirling around me. I knew I had disturbed something. A faint whisper crawled through the air, no words, just despair. Then, a chill gripped me. The shadows morphed, shifted, and I felt something reach out for me. My scream got stuck in my throat. The door slammed shut behind me. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air shifted, thickening around me until it felt as if the darkness had mass. My heart raced, inaudibly thrumming against my ribcage. The echoes of desperation reached my ears, more pronounced now, as if they were carried by a breath too cold for this world. I stood still, straining to hear more, but the whispers crawled and faded away like smoke before the wind. Panic surged. This couldn't be happening. I pressed against the door, my palms flat against the cool wood, but it didn't budge. A cacophony of feeble pleas filled the thick air, pulsating like a heartbeat. "Get out, they murmured, each syllable a knife twisting in my gut. Leave now. I stumbled backward, my legs tangling as I clutched at starlit void, my vision adjusting to the faint glimmers around me. I peered into the shadows, searching desperately for a source, an explanation, but all I found was an oppressive blackness. My breath quickened, and from that darkness emerged shapes ill-defined, but human-like. They drifted and swayed as if caught in a spectral waltz, their faces twisted with anguish. I felt bile rise in my throat as I recognized the expressions. They mirrored the pain from that scrap of paper, the legacy of the Fairmonts, their twisted torments manifesting in ethereal form. That I took a staggering step back, but instead of more emptiness, my foot collided against something hard, sending me crashing to the ground. I landed awkwardly, the breath forced from my lungs as pain shot through my shoulder. My fingers brushed against the cold surface of an intricately carved box, a familial treasure lost to time, perhaps hidden there, waiting for someone to unleash the horrors contained within. That I hesitated, the weight of centuries pressing down on me. I had to know what lay inside. What forbidden knowledge might lie buried there? But dread crawled up my spine as I felt a cold touch slide around my arm, pulling me back into the abyss. The presence was palpable now, a malignant energy that seeped into my very being, threatening to drown me with its despair. Please, I gasped, searching for a glimpse of what haunted the shadows. Who are you? The figures responded with a collective shudder, their faces distorting into expressions of sorrow and fury, eyes wide with unvoiced warnings. A woman stepped closer, her form brightening momentarily, a flash of clarity. The air thickened again, and I recognized the familiar features, the same striking eyes that stared back at me in old photographs from the Fairmont family archives. It was her, the matriarch, her portrait a staple in the town's history. Release us! She cried, her voice echoing with anguish. You must break the curse. The shadows surged forward, unrelenting, wrapping around me like chains. They wouldn't let me leave, they were desperate, suffocatingly so, grasping and clawing at me with cold spectral fingers. No, no, no. I shouted, panic spilling over. I wrestled with them, but the more I struggled, the tighter their grip. I reached for the box beneath me, my fingers trembling as I fumbled to lift its lid, my mind a whirlpool of dread. What if it held answers or, worse, unleashed something beyond comprehension? Just as I pried it open, a blinding light flared from within, shattering the shadows. A scream erupted from the depths of that darkness, a soul-piercing wail that seemed to split the world around me. My vision dimmed to a pinpoint as I felt a ground-shaking force knocking the breath from my lungs. As the light pulsated, radiant yet maddening, I heard a whisper, a name. My name. It whisked through the air like a thin film of water, a promise of truth wrapped in the very essence of fear. I had to choose, confront the truth or succumb to the grasp of the Fairmont legacy. Then suddenly, the shadows pulled back violently as if repelled, and I was left, gasping, alone in the brilliant silence. But the visions of those trapped souls remained vivid in my mind's eye, their pleading faces haunting me, etching the words into my consciousness like a grim reminder of the choice I had to make. But as I dared to breathe, I realized something cold had settled over my shoulder. A shiver crawled down my spine, and it whispered again, this time undeniably poignant, the realization that I was not alone in that room. I felt a warm breath against my neck. Choose wisely, it hissed, and then everything turned black once more. The darkness enveloped me, pressing against my skin like a living blanket. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever coiled behind me was not merely a figment of my imagination. I dared not turn to look, an instinct deep within warned me against challenging the spectral forces that thrived here. I remained frozen, my breath caught somewhere in my throat, the weight of dread clinging to me as tightly as a shroud. Then, amidst the suffocating silence, a low sound began to rise, a whisper mingling with the very fabric of the air. It wasn't just one voice but a chorus of despair woven into a single thread, pulsating in time with my racing heart. Find the truth, break the cycle. That cry reverberated within me, igniting both terror and an undeniable urge to comply. I opened the box wider, light spilling forth in a fog of swirling energy, illuminating my surroundings and revealing them in stark contrast to the oppressive shadows. Inside the box lay tattered pages, yellowed with age, alongside an artifact that glimmered menacingly, a small key that seemed to throb in rhythm with my pulse that I couldn't explain why, but I grasped the key tightly. A surge of memories washed over my images, not my own, moments of the Fairmont lineage etched in agony and heavy with consequence. Each face I saw was steeped in anguish, the living manifestations of sufferings tethered to secrets that had simmered beneath the surface for far too long. As I held the key, the air shifted again, thickening with a malevolent presence that felt both familiar and foreign. It lunged at me, wrapping around my throat, icy fingers tightening, dragging me into the depths of those haunting memories. I gasped for air, desperate to escape the impenetrable grip. A figure emerged from the void, a silhouette cloaked in despair, its features obscured. But I could feel its eyes bore into me, judgment laced with anguish. "Why did you come here?" It rasped, every syllable losing venom and sorrow. "You think you can change the fate laid before you? You think you can escape it?" I swallowed hard, the weight of my decision crashing down upon me. The whispers of the souls grew louder, urgently pleading. "Don't let her bind you. Release us." My heart thudded painfully. I had no answers to their cries, yet I could feel their collective desperation coursing through me, urging me to act. I fought against the immobilizing grip, straining to recall the histories I had dug up, the vestiges of curses, of bloodlines shackled to the vices of the past. "You are a Fairmont, you always have been," the figure hissed, leaning closer, the shadows swirling around it as if animated by its despair. "The moment you opened that box, you sealed your fate. You invited this. You cannot break the chain." I fought back, the bile rising in my throat. I was the culmination of horrors, and yet I still didn't understand why I had been drawn here. What did I possess that changed anything? The key grew cold in my palm, and for a second, I was lost in the enormity of it, a mere mortal tangled in an inescapable web. The figure lunged at me, its form shifting, flickering between the man and a mass of darkness, an embodiment of chaos. "You belong to us. This is your destiny." It reached for the key, its malformed fingers grazing my hand, bringing forth a wave of anguish that crashed through my defenses. I yanked my hand back, heart racing as the shadows convulsed, echoing the anguished cries of the souls they contained. "No. I won't accept that." I screamed, my voice mingling with theirs in a haunting symphony, yet even as the words left my lips, the presence behind me solidified. The breaths on my neck were a tormenting caress, sending cold tendrils of terror shooting through me. It loomed closer, its form dangerously familiar. Whole worlds folded into itself as I recognized the face. It was the matriarch, the very woman I had seen before. But now, her visage cracked with sorrow and rage, distorting the beauty once captured in frames long past. "You cannot flee from your heritage," she whispered, the sound threading through my very being like poison. "You must descend into the depths to unravel the truth." The key pulsed in my palm, a heartbeat against the backdrop of dread whispering through the air. Behind the matriarch, shadows churned with furious intensity, enclosing me in a cage of torment. But suddenly, the air crackled, and I felt a pull stronger than any terror encircling me. It tore at the fabric of the darkness, and for a fleeting moment, I glimpsed a door etched into the walls, its frame pulsating with raw light. A door that could lead to potential salvation or uncharted horrors. I took a step forward, compelled by a force greater than my fear, feeling the oppressive chains of the Fairmont legacy tug at my essence. Whatever lay behind the door beckoned me closer, filling me with hope and dread alike, and just as my fingers grazed the handle, I heard a piercing scream, echoing from the abyss, growing louder, swelling like a tempest. The horde of restless spirits raged, clawing against the barrier the light had miraculously forged. The door trembled under my touch, whispering both promise and peril. In an instant, everything fractured. The whispers crashed into a piercing silence, and I stood there, suspended in a moment, caught between decision and dread. Would the truth deliver me, or would it shackle me deeper into the Fairmont horrors that had turned flesh into shadow for generations? I had to decide, but as I pushed the door open, I realized something even more gut-wrenching, a warmth creeping up my spine juxtaposed against the ice within the shadows. I had drawn closer to something beyond reckoning, but before I could react, a mirror of my own terrified expression stared back at me from the darkness. "You've made your choice," it whispered, and then the scream erupted, an echo of my own voice, a reflection of terror reverberating from the depths of the Fairmont legacy. In that moment, I understood I had unleashed something that would change everything. I stumbled backward, the door swinging open to reveal an expanse that shouldn't exist, a realm stitched from fragmented memories and shadows. The air thickened, crackling with a static energy that sparked against my skin. The realm was a liminal space, a bridge between the living world and the haunting histories that had shackled my lineage for centuries. A vast, desolate landscape stretched before me, marked by crumbling statues and wilted flowers, each one whispering tales of the dead. The moment I crossed the threshold, the door behind me slammed shut, the resounding thud reverberating through the silence, locking me within this waking nightmare. The air reeked of decay, and an undulating fog slithered across the ground, obscuring whatever lay beneath. Whispers taunted me, "You shouldn't have come, it will take you." The shadows morphed, revealing twisted figures that writhed in ethereal agony, their mouths opening to scream but producing only a chilling silence. I took a tentative step forward, each movement stirring the remnants of their energy, an unsettling dance of loss and despair. I had to press on, the key pulsed relentlessly in my palm, still tethered to an unfathomable sense of purpose that terrified me to my core. Further ahead, I saw silhouettes draped in tattered shrouds, standing vigil over an unmarked grave. With each step, a visceral dread coiled tighter around my heart, until I heard a voice, clear and familiar yet drenched in sorrow. "Why did you return?" I turned, eyes landing upon a figure bathed in a cold, silver light. A woman stood before me, her features both foreign and familiarly haunting, an echo of long-lost kin. The spectral resemblance was undeniable. She gazed at me with hollowed eyes, the traces of beauty marred by the weight of despair, each glance cutting deeper than any blade. "You must leave, return to the world of the living. You cannot dwell here, but I have to understand," I implored, desperate for guidance amid the chaos clawing at my essence. "What is this place? What binds us?" Her wisp-like form flickered, both fragile and powerful, as the shadows behind her began to writhe violently. "Seek the truth, and you may find salvation. Learn the origins of the torment. But beware, not all truths are meant for mortal eyes, and some should remain shrouded in darkness." Suddenly, the ground shook beneath me, splintering the surface like the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. The graves shifted and opened like yawning mouths, revealing dark, gnarled roots that snaked outward, seeking warmth, pulling forth whatever warmth remained in this cold realm. My heart raced as one root lashed out, curling not just around my ankle but through the very essence of my being, threatening to drag me into the abyss beneath. That I gasped, horrified as I realized, these roots were not simply feeding on the dead, they craved the living. Their touch sent jolts of despair into my veins, each curled tendril etching shadows of every pain that had echoed through the Fairmont halls for generations. "No. Stop. I won't succumb," I screamed, struggling against the grip, but the whispers intensified, the air thickening with their lament, wrapping me in sorrow. "You belong to us. You are one of us." The woman's face contorted with agony, and for a moment, I saw another figure surge from the shadows, me matriarch, her expression a whirlwind of torment and rage. "Flee from this taint. It will drown you. You must understand that darkness isn't merely a force, it craves the truth as much as the truth craves it." Everything spiraled, shadows cascading around me like a tidal wave, even the whispers grew chaotic, a cacophony ricocheting through the very marrow of my bones. I remembered the key and raised it high, its glimmer a beacon amid the encroaching night. "Let me through. Show me the truth so I can free us." The roots hesitated, recoiling from the glimmer of silver light, and I felt a brief flicker of power surge through me. I released a primal scream, channeling my fear into a cry that intersected with the shadows around me. "Release us," for a harrowing second, I thought it had worked. A light illuminated the surroundings, forcing the roots to withdraw, revealing glimpses of other faces entwined in darkness, souls trapped in eternal tangles of betrayal and sorrow. They too reached out to me with outstretched arms, eyes wide with fear and longing for release, but then the shadows erupted, coalescing into a tremendous form, a looming figure, more monstrous than any specter I had faced yet, dwarfing the faint light of the key. Its eyes burned with a malevolent hunger, and I staggered under the weight of its gaze. "Foolish girl," it boomed, its voice like grinding stones. "You think you can change what is fated?" I clutched the key, but tremors swept through my limbs. The figure's darkness spoke of unspeakable things, of a past unbroken and a curse unwound. I was losing my grip on reality, on hope. The ground roiled beneath me once more, and I teetered precariously close to the gaping maw of the grave that had split open, the throat of which seemed to pulsate with hunger. I looked to the woman, to the figure of my matriarch who loomed in the shadows of my mind. Silence fell like an eerie shroud, and I knew if I didn't act, I wouldn't just lose my life, I would lose those trapped within this eternal cycle of torment forever. I had to confront the truth. I had to unveil it before I was drawn into the depths of my family's nightmares, before darkness swallowed me whole. And just as I made my resolve to thrust the key into the heart of the shadows, a chilling laugh echoed through the air, ricocheting off the ethereal walls. "Welcome to your new destiny." The voice twisted through time and space, sending a frigid wave of despair rushing over me. In that moment, I realized that darkness was not merely an adversary, it was a part of me, sewn into the fabric of my soul. With that understanding came the unbearable choice, teetering at the precipice of my fate, just as everything began to unravel around me. As I plunged the key toward the shadows, I had no way of knowing if I was about to choke the lingering terror or awaken a horror more profound than I could have ever imagined. The moment the key's point pierced the writhing, smoky mass, a shock wave surged through the ground, a violent tremor that ignited the shadows, illuminating faces twisted in pain and longing. The echoing laughter ceased, replaced by a guttural roar that reverberated through the very essence of the realm. With every heartbeat, the air thickened, suffocating me like an iron vice, pulling me closer to the mouth of the grave. "Fool!" the monstrous voice thundered, its sound vibrating like a hellish symphony. "You play neither hero nor savior. Your blood is but a sacrificial offering." A scream lost in time, the shadows lunged towards me, rippling with rage, filled with the ferocity of every soul trapped beneath the weight of history. I stumbled back, my foot barely missing the seething abyss, my heart racing against the tide of despair clawing at my throat. The woman from before, with her mournful visage, shimmered into clarity for a fleeting moment, and through her despair, I saw flickers of hope, a glimmer that suggested I was not entirely lost. "Remember, you bear the legacy of their sacrifice," she shouted, her voice struggling against the clamor, echoing through the paralysis of fear that gripped me. "You have the power to break the cycle, but you must bear witness to the truth, no matter how gruesome." But what truth? I had already witnessed horrors intertwined in an unbreakable thread rooted in betrayal, an ancestry that was nothing but darkness. The shadows transformed, becoming gnarled branches twisting to form grotesque shapes, fingers, hands, faces, each one snapping and writhing, reaching for my flesh, desperate and hungry. I gripped the key tighter, the silver gleam now a weak beacon against the dark tide. "What do you want from me?" I screamed into the cacophony, hoping to pierce through the veil of shadows wrapping tighter around my chest. "Your acceptance." The voice roared, its tone a mixture of contempt and yearning. "Embrace it. Embrace who you truly are." All at once, the shadows drew back, and I felt the urgency of the moment. I had to choose: either accept this dark legacy or fight against it, but to fight, I needed knowledge, clarity. The key pulsed in my palm, urging me to seek the very truth I feared. "Open your eyes," the woman implored, her visage now frantic, the shadows swirling behind her as if heeding her call. "Look deeper into the darkness. The answers await in the burial ground of your kin." With a deep, rattling breath, I focused on the shadows merging into a swirling vortex, the figures of my ancestors flickering before me. The deeper I gazed, the more stories unfurled, every anguished wail echoed against the walls of this hellish purgatory, threads of guilt and vengeance woven into the very fabric of time. Visions flooded my senses, me ancestors weeping, bound not only by blood but by unspeakable choices made in desperation. Faces morphed into those of not only victims but tormentors. They did not merely suffer, they acted, betraying one another for survival. A dark tapestry of rage and sacrifice unfurled, revealing that the roots now entwining our fates were born from treachery. "No!" I gasped, staggering back, the truth slamming into me like a gale-force wind. "This isn't who I am. but the shadows surged, darker than ever, attempting to draw me in. You cannot escape your nature, the growl reverberated as the malevolent form loomed closer, eyes blazing with predatory hunger. It is built within your very being, coursing through your veins, not if I deny it. I shouted, gripping the key, the silver warmth igniting with fervor. I refuse to be a part of this horror. I will rewrite my fate. As if mocking my defiance, dark limbs shot forward, snaring around my wrists, anchoring me in an iron grip. I was pulled toward the depths, suspended above the churning maw of the grave, the icy tendrils stinging against my skin, suffocating my breath. You do not possess the power to change your bloodline, child. With a sudden roar that shattered the silence, I thrust the key forward, driven by desperation and newfound determination. Light burst forth, sharp and brilliant, searing through the shadows, illuminating their anguished faces that swirled around me. They reached out, grasping for my hands, their desperation renewing an instinctive fear within me, but as the light flared, time itself seemed to warp a ripple in the fabric of reality that sent a tidal wave crashing through the realm. I was thrown back, the key slipping from my grasp as the shadows screamed in rage. The ground beneath my feet split wide like a gaping mouth, threatening to swallow me whole, and then, in a flash of blinding light, the world around me convulsed, shifting once more, losing all sense of structure. What emerged was not the flickering shadows, nor my ancestral kin, but instead something altogether different, something far worse. A face surged forth from the black, one so hideous, yet achingly familiar. My own reflection carved through the veil of darkness, eyes hollow, a grotesque form haunting and powerful. You will not escape. The voice, echoing my own, resonated deep within my soul, a final promise cloaked in designa harbinger of doom that wrapped around my spirit like chains. You are me, and I am you. As the echoes of that chilling declaration echoed off the edges of my mind, I felt the abyss pulling me closer, the shadows licking at my heels, hungry for the truth I had barely begun to comprehend. The darkness enveloped me, a living entity that coiled around my thoughts, whispering the forgotten histories of my bloodline, compelling me to yield. You cannot run from what pulses in your very core, the nightmarish version of myself warned, its voice a sinister cacophony that blended with the howls of the damned still swirling in the ether. Desperate, I searched for a way out, a glimmer of light amid the consuming shadow. With every attempt to free myself, new tendrils emerged, tightening their grip, anchored in the whispers of long-buried sins. In that twisted moment of duality both me and yet not me felt the pull of my own desires colliding with the ancestral hunger that beckoned from the depths of my lineage. Join us. My reflection taunted, eyes shimmering with dark allure. Embrace the legacy that pours from your veins. The power is intoxicating, no. I gasped, voices melding into a nightmarish symphony. I am not you. I refused to succumb, yet the shadows around me shimmered, doubt creeping in as my resolve wavered. Images of my ancestors twisted into cruel smiles, their fingers beckoning like puppets on a sinister stage. Each face pulsed with emotion, anger, betrayal, desperation, a horrifying reflection of choices that consumed them whole. The very ground trembled as their memories clawed from the abyss, revealing snippets of their past ventures into darkness, pacts made with forces I could not comprehend. My heart thundered against the iron grip of the abyss, the key's light once a beacon now dim and fragile. Suddenly, the woman's visage from earlier materialized again, no longer shimmering but solid, her ethereal presence battling against the tide of shadows. Do not listen to the deception. She screamed, voice fierce, urgency spilling from her words as she reached for me. There is more at stake than your history. You are the thread that can sever this chain of torment. Do not give in. I struggled against the shadows, their whispers turning vile, taunting me with seductive promises of power and freedom at the price of my soul. You'll never know the strength you possess unless you embrace the dark. They hissed, twisting the truth into grotesque forms to ensnare my spirit. No. I shouted as the reflection's laughter ripped through me, shattering the last remnants of my certainty. I am not a monster, but the ground tremored violently, swirling into a maelstrom of despair, the tang of decay filling my nostrils. Foolish child. The growling shadows screeched, the void will claim you whether you fight or not. As I flailed against this relentless tide, memories resurfaced, snippets of family gatherings, dark secrets traded like currency when laughter filled the air. In those moments, hidden alongside the apparent warmth, shadows flickered just out of sight. Betrayal's seed had been sown long before my birth, a ghastly punctuation to their legacy. Then, from the corner of my gaze, I noticed something flickering amidst the shadows, a symbol etched into the very fabric of the ground below me, pulsing with the rhythm of a heartbeat. It emanated a warmth that felt eerily familiar, a signpost guiding me to an ancient place, a final resting place of my kin embedded deep in the earth's memory. Find the heartbeat. The woman screamed, now a glowing figure defying the encroaching darkness as she pointed toward that pulsating sigil. It is the key to their freedom and your own. With newfound determination radiating through my veins, I surged against the shadowy grip. The key was somewhere within me, a power that screamed for release. Ignoring the reflections of my own swirling darkness, I lunged for that symbol, each step against the tide of teeth and tentacles gripping at my very soul. The whispers grew frantic, the cacophony drowning in rage as I neared the stain of ancestral turmoil, but as I reached the sigil, something snapped within me, a floodgate bursting, revealing not just the truth of my lineage, but previously hidden memories that tore at the fabric of my understanding. Visions of blood rituals, a terrible pact made generations ago, amalgamated with my own desires, saturating the air with their chilling essence. Just as my fingertips brushed the warm light of the sigil, the ground erupted, fissures gaped open, shadows screamed in unison, and from the depths, a figure emerged, born from the chaos, enveloped in darkness yet radiating an unholy light. Welcome home, child of darkness, it whispered as the world teetered on the edge of oblivion. Your true legacy awaits. With a final, agonizing roar, I was swept into an abyss of blinding despair, tossed into a realm where my fate and the weight of those before me would converge. The last thing I heard was my own voice whispering into the void, you are not alone, you belong. I awoke, not on solid ground but suspended in an expanse of swirling shadows that twisted like phantom fingers around me. My body felt weightless, yet the oppressive air clung to my skin as if it were alive, eager to suffocate the remnants of my consciousness. The memory of that chilling whisper lingered, echoing in my mind, your true legacy awaits. I twisted in the dark, searching desperately for a way to anchor myself. In the depths of that abyss, scattered fragments of images danced before my eyes, sights from a darker past that were once hidden from me, grotesque and warped. I saw the figures of my ancestors, their faces contorted in agony as they bound their souls in service to something far more sinister than I had ever imagined. Each act of devotion seemed to draw upon a blood price, their screams reverberating through the void like echoes of a forgotten rite. Suddenly, the shadows split apart, revealing a long-forgotten corridor that seemed to beckon me, its walls adorned with ancient symbols pulsating in time with an unseen heartbeat. They shimmered with a haunting allure, remnants of my family's sacrificial history etched into the fabric of this hellish plane. Driven by instinct rather than reason, I floated toward the corridor, feeling a strange power coursing through me. As I entered, the air shifted, thick with urgency. I sensed the presence of something vast watching me from the recesses. I could feel its hunger, its anticipation writhed against my skin that I pressed forward, the heartbeat growing louder, almost synchronized with my own erratic pulse. Whispers slithered around me like serpents, filling my ears with the countenance of the damned. Join us, they hissed, words dripping with venomous temptation. You are destined to inherit all that we have sacrificed, all that we have become. No. I cried out, desperately fighting against the seductive call of my lineage. I won't repeat their mistakes. Yet the corridors seemed to pulse, walls shimmering with secrets that begged me to uncover them. As I moved deeper into that darkened realm, I could no longer deny the allure that wrapped around my soul, promising power, respect, and an end to this nightmare. In that moment of weakness, I stumbled upon a door, ornate and pulsating with life, an ancient threshold. The door whispered secrets just beyond its wooden facade, breathless sighs rising to the surface, begging me to cross over. Above it loomed a time-worn inscription, almost illegible, yet it bore a chilling message: to awaken the hidden, one must first embrace the darkness within. My heart raced. Should I open it? What awaited me beyond this threshold? I pressed my palm against the door, it pulsed gently beneath my hand, alive, resonating with the potential of what lay hidden. But just as I mustered the courage to go through, a host of spectral hands erupted from the shadows, gripping me fiercely, faces materializing around me, anguished visages of my ancestors. "Do not enter!" they cried in unison, their voices a discordant melody of fear and despair. "You cannot control what lies within. It will consume you." Their warnings draped over me, a shroud of indecision. Would I lose myself forever to the darkness threatening to engulf me? Something stirred within, a shadow of doubt tangled with their despair, whispering enticing promises of supremacy and liberation. But then, from the suffocating dark, a chilling laughter pierced through the cacophony, reverberating with the familiar timbre of my own reflection. "You do not truly wish to resist, do you?" it mocked. "You crave acceptance. The family legacy flows through your veins. You are one of us. Embrace your destiny." With a surge of adrenaline, I tore myself away from their grasp, heart pounding in panic. I spun towards the door once more, the shadows writhing in protest. If I opened it, I could learn the truth, but if the whispers were to be believed, I would also unearth a horror unlike anything I could fathom. That I hesitated, fingers trembling against the cool wood, shrouded in swirling energies. The heartbeat grew stronger, pulsing through me, a morbid rhythm of anticipation and dread, and in that critical moment before I could gather the strength of my resolve, the door shuddered violently, thrown wide open by unseen forces, a blinding light spilling from the other side. I was pulled closer to the threshold, wind howling around me, the ancestral specters wailing a final warning, their fingers clawing for me as if to safeguard their legacy. Just then, I caught a glimpse of what lay beyond, a massive, shadowy figure unfurled from the light, eyes burning with an insatiable hunger, mouth curled into a smile that seemed like death incarnate. "Welcome, my child," it roared, a voice both inviting and utterly monstrous. "Your family's legacy begins anew." With one final scream, the shadows surged forward, pulling me into the radiant unknown, and the last thing I grasped as the world shattered around me was the knowing look of my reflection, malevolent and triumphant. The world around me fragmented into a kaleidoscope of blinding light and encroaching darkness as I fell through the threshold. The sensation was not one of liberation but of being consumed, devoured by an insatiable void. The radiant hue became a suffocating mist, swirling with the echoes of tortured souls, memories once held captive, unleashed upon the air like an unholy choir. I landed hard on solid ground, the impact splintering the obscured reality. Breathless, I found myself in a cavernous space illuminated by an unearthly glow, the walls shimmering with flowing inscriptions carved deep into the Stonian archive of horrors written in blood. Symbols writhed like serpents, etching tales of sacrifice made to our ancestors' insidious benefactor. The air was thick with despair and palpable dread, filling my lungs with the weight of centuries of anguish. As I regained my footing, vines of shadow crept along the floor, slithering toward me, hungry tendrils seeking my warmth. Instinctively, I recoiled. But the very act of retreat brought forth a fresh wave of movement in the darkness. The shadowy figure from before bore down upon me like an avalanche, its form towering and skeletal, wreathed in a tempest of darkness that seemed to drip from its malice. "Do not fear the truth, child of Fairmont," its voice resonated with a depth that shook the very ground, threading through my mind like a vile whisper. "You stand on the precipice of your awakening. Embrace your lineage, for it has waited too long for your return." I stumbled backward, falling against the earthen wall, the cool touch of the stone colliding with the fire of panic in my veins. "I don't want this. This isn't who I am." "Behold your family's offerings," it said, its elongated arm gesturing toward a series of grotesque altars arrayed around the chamber. Each one bore offerings wrapped in silver and ruby adornments, symbols of devotion turned bitter as a parent's abandoned love. Beneath the glimmering trinkets lay the countless throbbing hearts of those who had come before, their lifeblood spilled and forever caged in their servitude. Voices swelled from the depths, echoing warnings mingled with reckless pride. Each heartbeat resonated from the altars in unnatural harmony, an unholy chant weaving through the space, lured by the ancient rites that had claimed my ancestors. They cried out, not in anger but in a pleading lament, their spirits forever tethered to the legacy they had upheld. The malevolent figure drew nearer, enveloping me within its suffocating presence. To wield the power of your family, you must sacrifice what you hold most dear. Only then will you achieve the greatness that has been denied. Its eyes glowed with a deep crimson, swirling like embers in a consuming fire. Sacrifice? My voice trembled, each syllable heavy with dread. I searched for reason but found only terror in the faces of the damned that loomed around me. What do you want from me? The legacy demands a champion, one willing to seize their birthright, to extinguish the light of those who wish to impede you, it continued, as shadows twisted and formed into ghostly figures of loved ones I'd known and lost. Each face etched with expectations and fears handed down like a ceremonial gavel, my parents, my friends, all fading in and out of the darkness. The realization cut deeper than any blade. This was the choice. A visceral choice demanded by the shadows. They were not merely trapped in history, they were my lineage, intertwined with the malevolence that shaped who I might become. No. I howled, searching for a way to resist, to sever the chains binding me to this fate, but the figure merely smiled wider, exposing hollowed teeth that glistened with the remnants of desolation. Fight it, and you abandon them. Do what must be done, or they will languish in torment forevermore. Just then, a deep shudder rattled the ground, sending ripples through the ethereal veil. My heart thudded in paranoia as if the very air knew my thoughts, closing in, pushing the dreadful weight of my legacy down upon me. I felt it. Urge to fight, to flee to somewhere safe, but safety was an illusion, just as freedom seemed. And then came a new sound, of faint stirring echoed from the farthest altar. The faintest quiver of breath reverberated, sending sharp shivers down my spine. Shadows twitched, gathering like a storm, coalescing around an indistinct shape. A whisper carried in the wind, familiar yet chilling, snaking along my skin. Helpmeth figure turned, and I was met with a pair of eyes I recognized, filled with an aching sorrow that twisted my heart into knots. Mom. Desperation surged through me, uncertainty in the foundation I stood upon. Please. I shouted against the horror engulfing me, tell me I can save you. But the words echoed back empty, drowned out by the anguished moans of those who had cursed their own bloodlines. The shadows tightened their grip, and I stood at the intersection of love and madness, a fork in a desolate road. It became clear, my choice, whatever it may be, might just carve my family's fate forever. As I reached toward the familiar face in agony, the spectral figures surged forward, contorting into grotesque shapes, their hands clawing, desperately trying to pull me away from my own family. The dark figure loomed larger, and with a thunderous roar, it proclaimed, "Your choice is upon you, child. Act quickly, or lose all you hold dear." I hesitated for just a heartbeat, teetering on the brink of a decision that would seal our fates, only to be violently shoved forward, grasping the look of desperation in my mother's eyes, hoping to pull her free, not realizing my own doom was already sealed. The ground beneath me cracked, darkness spilling through with a rage that shook the very core of my being. I glanced back into the void that echoed with my family's history, devastation pooling around me. Shadows surged, and as the light enveloped us all, the last thing I grasped was the agonizing reality that choice was no truth, only the unraveling of an inescapable legacy. And then, everything shattered. As the world around me splintered, I was wrenched from the infernal realm of shadows, dragged into the chilling embrace of the familiar, my room. Yet something was dreadfully wrong. My surroundings were itself a grotesque parody of home. Shadows flickered along the walls, and a chill permeated the air, thick and suffocating. The wallpaper peeled like the skin off a rotten fruit, revealing raw, pulsating flesh where the paint had once been. Mom. I called, my voice trembling, echoing in the silence. But the only answer was the rattling of exposed pipes that wrapped the room like entangled tendons, beat with a life of their own. I felt the suffocating weight of dread coiling around my throat. Was it the darkness that had chased me, or something worse lurking in the recesses of my own mind? A faint rustle caught my attention from beneath the bed. I knelt, a bead of sweat inching down my spine, and peered into the abyss. The darkness yawned back at me, jagged shadows forming sinister shapes that whispered secrets of betrayal and anguish. I recoiled, my pulse racing. Suddenly, A hand shot out from the gloom, clawing at the floorboards, the skin pallid and twisted. I leaped back, breathless, as a familiar figure emerged, sallow-eyed and gaunt, as though life had been siphoned from her flesh. "Claire," it croaked, and I felt the world lurch beneath me. A shudder crept over my skin as I recognized the ghostly visage of my older sister, lost to the family's tragic legacy long before my awakening. She had been the rebellious light in our home, snuffed out too soon by the darkness that lurked within us. "Stay back. You shouldn't be here. Help me," she gasped, her voice like dry leaves crunching underfoot. Her gaze was imploring, yet shriveled and hollow, as though she were a mere echo of who she once was. "You need to understand I was taken." "Taken?" I repeated, trying to process her words, a sick urge boiling in my gut. "By what? The same force that lingers in our blood. It consumes us, Claire. It waits for you to awaken." The reality of her confession struck like icy daggers. The weight of my family's sins pressed down upon me, and I could almost hear the anguished wails of my ancestors, urging me to turn back. The sanctity of my childhood home had transformed into a tomb mausoleum filled with countless regrets and choices unmade. Suddenly, a crash echoed from the hallway, followed by frantic footsteps. My heart raced as the door trembled violently before bursting open. A figure emerged, my friend Max, wild-eyed and frantic, yet all warmth had drained from his face, replaced by a mask of primal fear. "We have to get out of here." "Max, wait." I called out, the haunting presence of my sister beside me. But he shoved past me, his eyes fixated on the windows, their glass cracking with each pulse of the building. "The shadows, they want to finish what they started." In that instant, like a puppeteer pulling at strings, the air shifted, shadows leapt forward in long, sinewy strands, wrapping around Max's limbs as he fought against them, his screams piercing through the veil of weighty silence. My heart raced as I grappled with the reality of our predicament. The darkness breathed around us, alive with pulses of insatiable hunger. "Help me!" came a chorus of voices, echoing from the corners of the room, pulling at me like predatory tendrils clawing for recognition. I turned back to my sister, her eyes glossy and pleading. "You have to save him, Claire. He's part of this too." I hesitated, feeling the overpowering force of my family's curse tugging at my core. The floor vibrated as if resonating with some sinister heartbeat, and as I knelt to reach for Max, the darkness thickened, becoming alive, swirling with whispers that clawed at the edges of my sanity. "No. Fight it." I screamed, but my voice drowned in the madness swirling around us. The very walls groaned, shadows leaping with ferocity, engulfing Max entirely. His screams became a wretched cacophony of despair, pouring into my ears like molten lead. "Come to me, Claire," the voice of the shadowy figure from the cavern resounded from the depths of darkness, its tone filling the room like a fog. "Embrace your fate, and save your family. You must become the vessel." The walls began to close in, narrowing around me like a death grip, and the realization sent a frigid jolt through my veins. There was no escape. I would have to make a decision that could cost me everything, even if it meant surrendering to the very darkness that had stolen my family's peace. As terror clawed at my insides, the shadows spiraled and coalesced within the grip of madness. Just as I felt myself teetering towards the inevitable, freeing my voice, I screamed, "No. I refuse to be part of this legacy." And then, darkness erupted into sheer chaos, a harrowing scream tearing my sanity as the twisted shapes around Max twisted into something monstrous and unfamiliar. The last image I captured was his obfuscated face, contorted in horror, eyes pleading as I stood paralyzed knowing I held the key to our collective fate but paralyzed by the truth of the twisted power I possessed. In that moment, I understood. The choice between family and self had never been mine to make. Everything shattered once more, pulling me into the depths of a new abyss, leaving me teetering on the edge of the unfathomable truth that awaited. I awoke gasping, breathless and drenched in a cold sweat. For a moment, I thought I had escaped the nightmare. The remnants of my sister's voice lingered in my mind, haunting like an echoing ghost. But it was no longer the comfort of my room that surrounded me, it was the very chamber of shadows I sought to escape. The darkness wove itself around me with malice and urgency, coiling like a serpent ready to strike. The whispers returned, their crescendo a tempest of anguish. You cannot flee from the past, they hissed, seeping into my thoughts, swirling to the cadence of my racing heart. You are bound to eat a Fairmont through and through. The words echoed like truth but adorned with a sinister promise. The air thickened, becoming palpable with a suffocating dread as I pulled myself up, the weight of realization pressing down on my spirit. Why desperation surged, mingling with a raw determination. I would dig deeper, confront the roots of this twisted legacy. Maybe, just maybe, the answers would exorcise the demons clinging to my bloodline. I felt the key pulse in my pocket, its warmth a troubling reminder of power still within my grasp. But would power set me free or immure me in a cycle of torment? Taking a deep breath, I began to traverse the chamber once more, navigating through the swirling fog of sorrow that gripped my throat. Flickers of dim light illuminated remnants of horror's visions of my ancestors caught in spectral moments of betrayal. They wept silently, their tears encased in shadows, longing for release. Their faces were a tapestry woven from the fabric of despair, each agonized expression inviting me to unravel the story that bound us. But just as I steeled my resolve to confront this tapestry, the shadows clawed toward me with hungry intent, erupting into belligerent demonic forms. You dare question the legacy of sacrifice? You carry our flesh and blood, a voice roared, a deep timbre mixing with the laughter of 1,000 disgraced spirits. I will not be another judge among the cursed. I cried amidst their thrumming jeers, my voice a spark against the darkness. A shadow of figure towering amid the swirls took shape, an embodiment of my deepest fears. Memories churned within me, memories of familial images played over in my mind like a grotesque slideshow. Love, but beneath it all, betrayal and greed festering within the walls of our home. You belong to me, Claire, the figure bellowed, hatred laced with a cruel desire. You cannot escape your destiny, fury ignited in me, the embers of defiance glowing like molten rock. I'm no one's vessel. I screamed, feeling the ground tremble beneath my feet as I once more summoned the key, raising it high before the mass of shadow. As I clutched the key, it pulsed with an intensity that rattled my very core. The shadows recoiled momentarily, recoiling like a wounded beast sending birth pangs through the oppressive atmosphere. Strike it down. A swarm of voices clamored, shrill with desperation and urgency clawing for validation. But somewhere beneath all this chaos, a small, tender voice caught my attention, slicing through the clamor of fears. Witness the truth, Claire. It was my mother, her face breaking through the bitter tapestry, glistening through the shadows like a faltering star. Not all who bear the weight of sacrifice do so willingly. You're stronger than they expect, her words surged within me, enkindling a quiet fire in the dark. I will break this cycle. I vowed, grounding myself against the trembling dark. I pressed forth, the key shining bright against the encroaching void. The darkness suffocated, aching to reclaim me. It stops with me. With a heartbeat's breath, I dug the key into the mass of shadows swirling before me, defiance clawing to shatter every remnant of despair. The impact sent out ripples like shockwaves, a collision not between worlds, but between blood and choice. The key erupted into a blinding blaze that fortressed me against the darkness. In that moment of chaos, the shadows twisted and roiled, shrieking and contorting, but the walls began to crack and splinter, revealing truths hidden beneath layers of despair. Images of betrayal played out before me, twisted narratives that bled into the silhouette of my ancestors. Every sacrifice made did not conclude in peace. I saw my sister, her terrified face frozen in desperation, caught in this realm, not as a vessel but moving through the agony of lessons unlearned. My heart ached as I realized the cycle of torment cut deeper than historical grief. It was a lesson of foreboding, intertwined with every betrayal reborn again. It was then I understood those souls beckoning to me, not simply shadows but fragments of a deeper power they had failed to wield. It was not too late. I could seize their pain and rebuild from the ashes. The darkness was within me, but so was the capacity to wield it against itself, throwing open the doors to the light where peace could reside. With a roar echoing through the void, I plunged the key deeper into the heart of the swirling tempest, a wrenching stream of radiant energy bursting forth, illuminating the chamber with pure light. The cries of my ancestors crescendoed, not in anger but in exultation as the shadows withered, twirling into wisps receding into the air. The remnants of darkness fell away piece by piece. I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. The echoes of tradition that had haunted us for generations were breaking, disassembling the fragile chains binding my family's legacy. And in that moment of reckoning, before the final fragments faded away, the haunting voice whispered back, "You are free." Just as I prepared to exhale the weight of this transformation, a shudder ran through the fissures once more, and reality rippled as if breaking apart. Fear crept back into my heart. What if this wasn't the end? What if shadows lingered forever, always awaiting their chance to reclaim what they once lost? But now, with the weight of a collective legacy in my hands and light illuminating the darkness, I pressed forward, tracing the path of my ancestors but carving my own. The threshold lay open, beckoning not just to the past but to a future reborn. As I stepped forth, hope surged through me, yet from the depths of the void came a chilling hiss, "You think it's over? You only awakened the hunger." And in that split second, clarity struck, settling like icy shadows in the corners of my mind, the echo of my reflection laughing, a taunting proclamation that darkness could never truly be annihilated, merely distilled. As I grasped that unsettling truth, a shiver danced along my spine. Power isn't an end, merely a beginning, and the shadows would always crave that which illuminated their existence. The last flicker of light faded, swallowed by an ever-hungry abyss, and within the silence, one haunting thought lingered, scratching at the edges of my mind. What would I awaken next?